They're saying basically that the state of Pennsylvania is like, you know what? If you receive gender affirming care as a minor, you should have the right up until age 30 to sue your healthcare provider for offering that gender affirming care to you if it turns out that they were acting in a completely flagrantly irresponsible manner.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So they're like, no, because I think they know that a lot of people who are getting gender affirming care as minors are going to sue their healthcare providers when they reach their 20s, when they reach their 30s, when they're fully myelinated, when they learn more. And they're like, oh, no, we can't do that.
So you can be tried with reckless endangerment if you know you have HIV and you intentionally hide that from another individual and give them HIV. I can't even believe that they are trying to prevent this from being the case.
They oppose increasing criminal
penalties. This is what I talk about, where I don't know how you can be pro-gay and pro-Democrat at the same time. Like, you have to, who suffers from this being removed from the law? Who is going to predominantly suffer from this being removed? It's going to be gays who are trying to practice safe sex. That is who's going to suffer for this.
Would you like to know more?
Hello, everyone. In a previous episode, we mentioned that Simone got a letter in the mail because, she's running for office, and they ask her, what are your thoughts on various issues? And with a lot of them, when it's like an anti-gun organization, she can just basically throw it in the trash because she knows she's not going to come off smelling like roses to these groups.
But I was super excited about this because this came from this group called Keystone Equality. They say that they support LGBTQ plus rights. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is one of those things where, we are more socially progressive, at least when it comes to our cultural sovereignty stance. We may not, we may be on the conservative end, but we very much support people having the freedom to pursue whatever culture they want. So this is a slam dunk. Like I should take this candidate survey so that they can endorse me and I can show to Democrats and libertarians and more socially progressive people in my district that, I may be a candidate worth consideration. I was so excited. And then I dive into it and I'm like, you know what? I should have known that there were going to be problems because their logo is not the classic gay flag.
Or the Republican gay flag, I call it now.
It is, as I think one of the Basecamp followers named it, which is the best name.
It is the
colonizer flag, which includes the additional triangle of white, pink, blue, brown, and black, because race is a sexual orientation.
I do not understand how, like, anyone who grew up with like a traditional understanding of non-discrimination, this is wild that this flag thing happened. The rainbow represented everything under the rainbow.
Yeah, that was the point. Yeah.
Like, you are literally saying we need to
be full spectrum,
less inclusive. We need to, it's so freaking Animal Farm. I really wish I had a good Animal Farm clip I could use every time I bring this up because it's so insane. It's like, well, yes, I know we're all equal, but some of us are more equal than others and need special representation on the flag. And we'll just erase a little bit of the historic gay identity with every little notch. And this is where I think in this survey, and through going over this survey, people are going to learn that the progressive, like what the quote unquote progressives are advocating for with gay bills and LGBT bills these days, it is not something that like any sane person would want. It is
it's no longer about protections. It's about providing privileged status to people and frankly creating a liability for genuinely LGBTQ plus people, because what you're more doing than anything at this point is creating space for bad actors. So let's get into these questions because I found them to be, I was so excited. I was like, oh, I'm just getting all these right. I love getting questions right. I love teacher, saying that I was correct. And I got increasingly alarmed through this.
You almost every single one, but two.
Oh, but two.
The bad guy on
I get the F.
I'd rather say that they've become the bad guys. And I am mortified at how, I think that sometimes
I can just read off some of the questions and you can stop when we
let's just go into it right now.
Did you vote in favor of the Fairness Act? Or if you're not an incumbent, did you support adding sexual orientation and gender identity as protected characteristics in Pennsylvania's Non-Discrimination Civil Rights Act? So what made me uncomfortable about that is this is just adding additional red tape whereby people are going to be able to start
and
lawsuits.
Gender identity. It doesn't say, like, that would include things like non-binary, which is basically a class that anyone can opt into.
Well, yeah. So basically, this enables this enables any abusive actor to suddenly say, oh, well, I'm non-binary and now I'm going to sue you because even though you fired me because I showed up late 5 weeks in a row and I'm an asshole and I didn't follow the company rules, I'm going to say it's because I was non-binary.
It basically allows everyone to become a protected class, which is obviously a bad idea.
Yeah. Then there's also, and this sort of more just runs against our cultural sovereignty rules. It says, do you support legislation that would ban the practice of conversion therapy for minors in Pennsylvania? Now, you and I in the Pragmatist Guide to Sexuality clearly state that like conversion therapy doesn't work unless it's like literally subjecting you to gay orgies until you get super saturated and tired of them for a while. But then you have to like re-up that.
And this is based on the evidence we have.
Based on the evidence, yeah. So like the only form of gay conversion therapy that works is like intense gay orgies that kind of get you just kind of done with it for a while, but you have to like re-inoculate. So one, it's not effective anyway, but two, like to prevent families from with their minors, giving them the form of therapy or like sort of religious treatment that you think is appropriate runs against our cultural sovereignty stance. So I couldn't answer that.
So to add some color to our position here, I would be okay with banning camps based on specific modalities of treatment, like what happens to the children at a camp. If these camps are doing something illegal with the kids, then of course they should not be legal. What I am against is banning camps based on the intent of the treatment, because while we have said no known therapy modality is effective helping same-sex attracted individuals either transition what they find most attractive or suppressing their attraction, that doesn't mean that it is impossible for such a treatment method to one day be invented. And some people, some children even, I know when I was younger, I had gay friends who would constantly tell me how much they wish they could just not be gay. There are young people who, if a treatment like this existed, would want said treatment. And to deny that they exist is to deny the lived experiences of hundreds of thousands of individuals. However, what I would be open to is a requirement that sending a kid to one of these camps requires the consent of both parents.
And I would note here that people would be like, well, then how do you, if you think that this isn't something that can be cured, for example, quote unquote cured, why are you okay with religious frameworks that, tell people to suppress their sexual desires? And it's because you don't have to act on them. Okay. You can decide, yes, this is my preference, but it is not my lifestyle choice. And it's so funny that like we get these comments from urban monoculture brained people who don't get it. You want to force, you want to allow some cultures to force same-sex attracted individuals to, marry a woman or join the clergy. And it's like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to, unlike you, allow same-sex attracted individuals to make choices about which culture they identify with.
Yeah, and this is just one option. This is one way you can choose to do same-sex identification. You can also choose to convert into a different culture that's all about flamboyant gay life, or you can convert into a culture that's like, oh, you're a gay female, that means you're a man. Or you can convert into a culture that's like, oh, you're just gonna be super non-binary and not talk about it and do whatever it is you want. Like, I don't care.
You're the one who wants to remove choice from same-sex attracted individuals.
Yeah, and that's the problem. That's coercion when you start to dictate that. So here's another question.
Wait, hold on. I wanted to point out here.
Okay.
A same-sex attracted Catholic priest is not going out there having sex with people because the Catholics are forcing him to. He chose that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't live in a Catholic monarchy.
No.
You are the one trying to remove choice from him.
Yeah.
I am trying to give him the maximum amount of choice. You just don't see it that way because you see a choice to not be a member of your cultural group, to not instantly gratify every desire you have as being a non-choice.
Yeah. So another question they ask is, do you support adding sexual orientation and gender identity and expression to Pennsylvania's hate crimes law and strengthening penalties for those who commit hate crimes? So obviously I couldn't answer yes to this either, because, we express candid opinions about being transgender, about youth gender transition, about LGBT stuff that could be interpreted, like perhaps in the UK where there are stronger hate crime laws, as a hate crime. J.K. Rowling has played with these rules on Twitter, in the UK. So, we have a YouTube channel where we comment on these issues, we comment on the policies, and we talk about the gray lines. And if I was in support of adding, strengthening the penalties and adding sexual orientation and gender expression to the hate crime laws in our state, I could be subjecting us to genuine legal liability, like personally. So I couldn't support that one.
Again, you cannot extend to hate crimes opt-in sexual identities. And I know non-binary people will be like, it's not a choice, but like,
right. But bad actors can make it a choice.
Yeah.
Bad actors, like, I mean, there's that one shooter who allegedly identified as
gender,
and they're like, oh no, that doesn't count, but like it does.
But
like,
it would count under the hate crime law. So you don't get to like disavow him because it hurts your community that now you're identified with a mass shooter. But you would disavow him, like.
And that's the thing. It's like when you're legislating, you have to keep in mind that you're not just legislating for the people you're defending. You also have to legislate around bad actors who may use this against the very people you're trying to protect, which of course, like, loops into the whole turf issue.
Well, this is the problem in Australia right now. Is somebody in Australia is being sued because they tried to keep transgender women off of their app, transgender women who didn't pass. So keep in mind, transgender women were allowed, just not non-passing, and that was considered illegal in Australia. You are not allowed to have lesbian-only spaces from a legal perspective. Now, because anyone can identify this way, there is no cutoff for what is transgender. Well, now any cis male sex pest can go on lesbian dating apps and harass lesbians. Like, of course that's going to piss off lesbians.
So that's another issue, right? Okay, so let's go to the next. I'm like, okay, come on, there has to be something here. Like, I'm an ally. Do you support efforts to modernize and simplify the process for legal name changes, including the removal of the requirement that name changes be advertised in local newspapers or law journals? Now, keep in mind, this is for people who have things like pending debts, who may have committed crimes. Like, the thing is now, this is another law that I can't support because it could be abused by bad actors. And I don't really see why, like, if I'm changing my gender and I need to legally change my name, is it so bad that I advertise in I mean, no one even reads the newspaper.
No, but you're absolutely right. Like the reason why that exists as a law is so people can't use this to like escape debt or like defraud people.
Yeah, and again, like these are not you're not being forced to post it on Facebook to your friends and family if this is a private and sensitive matter. This is advertising this in a place where if there are legal pending or financial issues, people will see it. But again, only bad actors would abuse that. So again, I can't just like, okay, come on, there's got to be something. Okay, well, here's another one we're totally going to lose on. Do you oppose efforts to prevent transgender students from participating in all publicly sanctioned or funded school athletic programs according to their gender identity?
Obviously.
Well, no, that's totally not fair. If you have, a 17-year-old natal male who's transitioned to female, who's competing in athletics, he's going to absolutely school on average, of course, his female competitors. This is something
where I love it, where they will come to you with like studies that have obviously been like combed through by the ultra monoculture to like, and I think that people don't understand what happens when they do that. When you come to me with a study and I can look at this person and be like, obviously they have an advantage. And you go, yeah, but look here. And if you split the data this way, they don't. That doesn't make me believe that they don't have an advantage. It makes me distrust academic institutions and studies. Okay. Everyone can see that we're being gaslit on this. Like, it's not hard. You have to be like a religious level of delusional to not be able to look at pictures like the ones I'm putting on the screen and be like, this person has an obvious biological advantage. And then you can say, well, some humans have a biological advantage over other humans, and that's unfair. And it's like, yeah, that's what sports were about. We created women's leagues so that women could compete, so that cis women,
because their bodies are on average quite different, which is yeah.
If you want to create transgender leagues, that's fine. If you want to create mixed gender leagues, that's fine. I am open to a world where everyone can strive and succeed. But when you en masse allow trans individuals into women's leagues, you create an environment where young girls who have worked very, very, very hard have their opportunity to be on top taken from them. And that is incredibly cruel.
So, as somebody with a number of trans friends, what I've heard from them, they view laws that prevent people like Leah Thomas from unfairly engaging in these competitions as primarily protecting trans individuals. It hurts the entire trans community when you see somebody obviously taking advantage of the carve-outs that are meant to protect trans people to get an advantage over other individuals. We used to see jokes about trans people competing in sports teams and being allowed in women's changing rooms as being fundamentally anti-trans because it was seen as so obviously an unfair thing to do.
Miss Mann?
Come in, dear. Have a seat. Take off your bra if you'd like.
I need to talk. See, I have this problem. I have a terrible secret.
Well, Cindy, we all have our little secrets. Sometimes we do things we're not so proud of to gain the athletic edge on the competition. Sometimes those secrets come back to haunt us.
And I also need to point out here in the case of someone like Leah Thomas, when you create these carve-outs, that malactors are going to use them for their own sexual gratification and to, well, goon on girls to be a sex pest. If you look at somebody like Leah Thomas, here's a quote from one of her teammates. "We did not give our consent. They did not ask for our consent. But in that locker room, we turn around and there's a 6'4" biological man dropping his pants and watching us undress, and we were exposed to male genitalia." I mean, do people really support this? Like, do they really know what's happening? That you have other underage girls in this room and they should be protected from somebody just being able to say, I identify as trans. Now I get to go in a woman's locker room and ogle at underage girls and force them to see my genitalia. Do you not see that somebody might be abusing these sorts of carve-outs, and that this abuse doesn't just hurt these underage girls, but also real trans people? And I, as somebody who believes the trans narrative, that real trans people exist, that there are real people in the world who are born the wrong gender and just want to be seen as the correct gender, do I believe for a second that somebody who actually just wanted to be seen as a girl would be walking around a girl's locker room with their penis hanging out? That they would be ogling at naked girls in a girl's locker room? Do I believe that? No. No, I don't. If that is what trans is, but if trans is the ability for a guy with an exhibitionism fetish to assume an identity that allows him into girls' locker rooms and forces girls to look at his genitalia, well, that's a different thing. That's not what I was told trans was, and that's not what I believe anyone who is really trans believes what trans is. Any real trans person is going to want laws on the books that prevent individuals like Leah Thomas from engendering ill will on their community, even if it means that they have to undergo really pretty trivial sacrifices, like not being able to participate in intramural sports.
Yeah. So
also,
there's another one here that's actually quite fascinating. They asked, do you oppose extending the statute of limitations under which a person could file a civil claim related to gender-affirming care, which could cause providers to leave the state in response to higher insurance premiums? So to give a little bit more color here, there is an amendment, House Bill 138, that would, according to Keystone Equality, which is I guess I'm going to out them, the organizations that's asking these questions, that would inappropriately increase the statute of limitations for gender affirming care of any kind for up to the age of 30 in cases where a minor was provided such care. They say that if passed, legislation would have the effect of making the cost of liability insurance prohibitive for healthcare workers seeking to provide affirming care for transgender people, and that the bill intentionally targets a transgender community by making healthcare harder to obtain for all transgender people. In other words, they're saying basically that the state of Pennsylvania is like, you know what? If you receive gender affirming care as a minor, you should have the right up until age 30 to sue your healthcare provider for offering that gender affirming care to you if it turns out that they were acting in a completely flagrantly irresponsible manner and you regret the care that you were given and you were not given care with a lot of
shit.
Yeah. So they're like, no, because I think they know that a lot of people who are getting gender affirming care as minors are going to sue their healthcare providers when they reach their 20s, when they reach their 30s, when they're fully myelinated, when they learn more. And they're like, oh, no, we can't do that because they can't afford the liability insurance for that.
That's monstrous.
I know. So I'm like, oh man, like
I want to reframe this in like a tighter form.
Okay.
They are trying to make it illegal for children that they have groomed and then believe, like a kid. I'm not saying like the parents think the children have been groomed.
Minors.
Like a minor gets convinced by their psychologist or something like that to get this care, later ends up realizing that they were brainwashed into getting this, or that they weren't really told what the alternatives are, which is something we know is happening at scale now from numerous leaks that have happened. Okay. Then they go back and they try to sue the provider and they would otherwise win the lawsuit. No, we're not saying just anyone who spuriously decides that they want to sue their provider of this stuff.
Yes.
It is trying to make it so that this individual, even if they would have won this lawsuit,
won't be allowed to.
Based on the evidence.
Because the statute of limitations will have passed.
Demonstrably provable that they were brainwashed, that they cannot go back on this. And keep in mind, this isn't even that long. It says by the age of 30, right? Like,
yeah, that's where they're trying to extend the statute of limitations with this Pennsylvania House bill.
That is not that long.
Yeah.
So they're basically comping right here, what I'm seeing here, that they know this wave of lawsuits is coming.
Yeah.
And they are trying to prevent it because they know internally,
well, it's not just that. It's not just that, because one, if this does pass, it will make liability insurance more expensive for healthcare providers who choose to provide gender affirming care.
Do that because of the level of misconduct in the field. If misconduct wasn't high.
As to how big is this flood of detransitioners going to be? Well, we now know from the study that came out in 2024, Development of Gender Noncontentedness During Adolescence and Early Adulthood, that of 11-year-olds who are discontent with their gender, over 90% of them by the age of 23 are 100% content with their gender. It just turned out that they were gay. So you are, if you put 11-year-olds who are discontent with their gender on gender-affirming care, sacrificing, castrating 9 gay kids for every 1 trans kid you are quote-unquote saving. That sounds like a pretty anti-gay position to me. The systematic and mass castration of gay children.
Well, now they could argue, because again, this is the cost of liability insurance. So they could argue that, well, this is insurers expecting that there's bad conduct and there's going to be a lot of expensive lawsuits, and then therefore charging prohibitively expensive premiums.
I attribute.
No. I do too, but I'm just making this as balanced as I possibly can, even though I'm obviously biased. But anyway, so like I can't say yes to that.
That's not even like, that is genuinely monstrous that you would try to prevent that.
I know. So then, here's another question from them.
Hold on. I want to point out a few other things here. This is like, if they know, and I suspect that most of the trans community now knows that puberty blockers have long-term consequences. This means all of the doctors who are telling their patients that, which we basically know from the evidence isn't true anymore, they can be sued. They don't want that to happen, because lying to the patient is a key part of gender affirming care. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. So this next question, a little more difficult, I would say. Do you oppose efforts at the state or school district level to restrict curricula, ban books, or curtail other age-appropriate educational materials or individual expression of the instructor because of LGBTQ content. Now, I mean, we don't care.
Obviously.
Well, we don't care if a teacher is gay. We don't care if a teacher says that they're married to someone of the same gender or if they're trans or whatever. But yeah, I mean, in general, content that promotes any type of pairing as being the correct type of pairing is something that
I think it's more than that. So I'll put on screen here a TikTok where you will see a teacher discussing what she is doing with her elementary school class.
Oh, yeah.
And this has been my first year in preschool with a class of my own, teaching alongside another queer neurodivergent educator, and we have been rocking our Choose class. We've been talking about gender and skin color and consent and empathy and our bodies and autonomy. It's been fabulous. But our teaching team is shifting and a new person is being onboarded, someone with many years of experience. So today at the lunch table, when the topic of gender and genitals came up, one of our students plainly looked up and said, "Well, I'm a girl today, but I know that teacher Co isn't. No, they're NB." And the look on the incoming teacher's face was priceless. She was shocked in a good way, and she just looked around at the two of us and said, "This class was incredible, and I am so impressed."
She is talking to them about genitals, about gender expression, she's like, yeah, when the topic of genitals came up, I'm like, whoa, why is genitals coming up with kindergartens as a regular lunchroom discussion? And why are all of the other teachers okay that this just happened? Because that's part of the story. Why are you indoctrinating the kids into your culture's framework around gender, which frankly is a fringe framework? It is, and I think that this is something that fundamentally that the urban monoculture, like people who are really steeped in it, struggle to understand. It's gender is at the end of the day a completely cultural phenomenon. The way that our culture relates to gender, there is a truth of gender, which is sexual expression, right? But the way you relate to sexual expression is completely, well, and gender expression, right? So when I talk about like XY chromosomes and the difference that makes in how people develop, and sometimes you can have intersex individuals, and different cultures will relate to those individuals differently. But most cultures have chosen just to lump people broadly into one of two genders, whichever one they seem more like. But that's a cultural decision. The urban monoculture has decided to atomize this almost as much as they can. But that doesn't mean that that's like necessarily the right way to react to it. And when I look to the unaliving rates within the urban monoculture, it seems to me it obviously isn't the right way to react to it. So am I okay with this system that seems to be correlated with high rates of unaliving oneself and increasing rates as acceptance for the LGBT community is accepted more? So it's not due to discrimination because the rates are increasing as acceptance is increasing. Am I okay with that, my child being exposed to that cultural system? No. And this is one of the things that always got me about the Florida law, like the Don't Say Gay law. I know the person who worked on drafting this law, and I had actually believed the urban monoculture's lie that the law made it so that gay teachers could not tell their students that they were gay. And it actually, among Republicans, when they were drafting the law, she's like, yeah, actually, in the first draft of the law, it could have been read that way. And we, the Republicans, before it went out, changed it so it couldn't be read that way. Because that is something that modern Republicans actually want. They just don't want it's brainwashed.
Okay, let me go to the next one. This is actually interesting, and I've never heard of this before. They ask, do you support prohibiting the LGBTQ plus panic defense in legal proceedings in Pennsylvania? So I asked Perplexity what this was because I'd never heard of it before. Basically, it's one, not even really a defense that's used in murder cases a lot, but basically it's something that sometimes defenders try to use to say like, oh, this person was so freaked out related to the other person's LGBTQ plus status that's why they murdered them or did something.
You are underselling it. The panic defense comes into play when a person lies about their sexual or gender.
Yeah, that's where it most likely comes into it.
So it happens if today they'd be trans. Historically, they would have been gay. There's been changing the way we relate to gender as a society. But a trans person, for example, lies to a person that they were cis And then when that person realizes, often because they haven't undergone, full, they say, "Oh, I just had sex with you, and now I see you have a penis," or something like that. They freak out and they murder the person. This is obviously a horrifying thing, but here's sort of the way I would put it. Do I think that Muslims should be able to use as a defense in a murder case, this person secretly slipped me pork intentionally? Because I view that as a similar kind of offense. In this offense, the individual has knowingly done something that the Muslim thinks is going to cause them to be tortured for all eternity, and maliciously done it for their own momentary pleasure, maybe a laugh or something like that. While I do think it is a truly monstrous thing for an individual to do, because that's why these people are so mad. Like, they're acting like they're mad because the person is LGBT.
Well, and again, this is not something that's used to get people off the hook. It's just it's something that's used in a court of law to be like, they were driven insane. They panicked because of their belief structure. And the reason why a lot of people who support LGBTQ rights are like, hey, let's just not allow people to use this defense at all, is it's offensive to even suggest that being LGBTQ plus in some way would cause someone to freak out that much.
But that's not what they're freaking out about. That's the point. They are not freaking out that their partner is gay. They're freaking out that they just had sex with a guy.
I know. But Malcolm, what you're missing is that the reason why they're trying to remove this from defense cases is that shouldn't be something that's normalized. Like, you shouldn't be allowed to wake up next to someone who you thought was one sex and is another sex.
They shouldn't be allowed to hold their religious beliefs.
Exactly. Yes. So anyway, that's, I think people should be allowed to give that context in the court of law, because like to your point, if someone was fed pork when it's against their religion, I would want to know that in a court case, because I would want to know, like, why were they freaking out so much? Like, this is weird. You need to know the context.
It should be admissible in a court context, but it shouldn't necessarily get them off. But that's the way.
But it doesn't, and it doesn't, and it hasn't. They're basically just saying this shouldn't be discussed at all. So that's one, and it's interesting.
I just know. Which is actually kind of insane. The court who's making the decision shouldn't be allowed to know that this
the context
was tricked into sleeping with a guy.
Yeah.
In their mind. Maybe not in the other person's mind, but in their mind, they thought it was a guy.
So anyway, this next question ties back to what we were discussing in terms of like HIV positivity in the LGBTQ plus world. They ask, do you oppose increasing criminal penalties for people who are HIV positive, when those who are not HIV positive would not be subject to those increased penalties for the same offense? So here they're basically saying, like, should people be penalized for being irresponsible when they have HIV and could hurt other people because of it?
No. This is about a specific legal statute. So you can be tried with.
It's like reckless endangerment, right?
I don't think it's reckless endangerment. If you know you have HIV and you intentionally hide that from another individual and give them HIV. I can't even believe that they are trying to prevent this from being the case.
That we would, that they oppose increasing criminal penalties.
This is what I talk about. Where I don't know how you can be pro-gay and pro-Democrat at the same time. Like, you have to, who suffers from this being removed from the law? Who is going to predominantly suffer from this being removed? It's going to be gays who are trying to practice safe sex. That is who's going to suffer for this. Who benefits from this? Gays who are preying on other gay men.
Bad actors. That's a key thing here.
That is, why would you try to protect that if you wanted to protect the gay community? Because they don't care about the gay community.
Right.
They care about the bad actors. That's literally it.
I actually found two questions here that I do support. So that, and they're right next to each other. One is, do you support guaranteeing the rights of LGBTQ plus parents to seek and retain custody of their children, including foster and adopted children, without bias based on their status? Totally. Absolutely. That it should have nothing to do with it. And two, the second one that we would finally get to say yes to, do you support equal rights for legally married same-sex, same-gender couples as those granted legally married couples who are the opposite sex or gender? Totally. Doesn't matter if,
I actually want to push back on what some of our fans will say on these two issues.
Oh, yeah.
So one is some of our fans will say, how dare you allow a gay couple to adopt kids? Like, what about the effects that has on the kids? And I'm like, do you know how bad foster care is?
Right.
Like, this is demonstrably better for the child.
like anyone who typically passes the requirements to adopt a child or whatever, you know, like, and also one, having a kid. So one, adopting is really hard. If you can adopt, you're probably way above like the standard of most parents who biologically have kids. And two, if you are conscientious enough to make the money and go through the intense hardship of having children, especially if you're a gay couple, lesbians, it's a tiny bit easier, but gay is like really hard to have kids, then you're probably way better parent.
This is also why we can't trust the data that says, because if you look at the data on do gay parents have a negative effect on their children growing up, it turns out that they actually have much more successful and mentally healthy kids.
Yeah, because they're like the people who are capable of having kids.
Yeah,
like,
the reason why this is the case is because of the gating that's
the barriers to entry
people
are
to
very
end up
high.
getting access to kids. So
Yeah.
it basically skews the study. But this is relevant if you're trying to bar these couples who are having better outcomes from even adopting, when keep in mind, kids who are adopted can often, if they want to, say, I don't want to be with this family anymore, or I find this situation abusive, but they're choosing not to because they believe this is better for them than what the alternative would be. How dare you make that decision for the child? Then the second case, the gay married couple should have the same rights. We had a comment in our last video. They said, well, these people aren't married. It's not a real marriage because you can't have a real marriage between same people. I'm like, from your cultural perspective, that's true. But there are versions of Christianity, and there are versions of Judaism, and there are versions of Islam, and there are versions of Buddhism that do believe that. So you can't just annul other religions because it's not what your religion thinks.
That comes back to cultural sovereignty.
Survival. That is fucking insane, one. And then two, even if like you 100% believe this and you think that our society is made worse for them being able to marry, right? You know you don't have the voting power to enforce that. You know all you do is hurt Republican chances of winning by going out there and being a hardliner and trying to get this into Republican policy positions. Why are you doing this? Even the majority of the Republican base don't want this. You know, I think it was 61% the last time I looked at the Republican base, not the Democrat base, the Republican base wants gays to be able to get married.
Yeah, especially the younger Republican base. So it's only a matter of time until this is.
It's like 30%. Only 30% of the young Republican base didn't want gays to be able to get married.
Yeah,
like it is. No, you are not helping anyone. And are you even helping the people you're banning from getting married? Do you think? Okay.
Do you really want to suppress marriage? Is this where?
No. That's not what I mean. You prevent a gay couple from getting married. Increased or decreased the probability that they find Jesus. Obviously, you've decreased the probability.
Fair point.
Because they're stuck in a degenerate,
you're forcing them away from.
They now see you as the enemy because you kept them from entering a marriage. And I also think here, this is where I get to the ordering of sins. And I think that this is something where classic Christianity is incredibly unbiblical. And I find it very frustrating. Okay? You are a sinner, but Jesus still saved you. How dare you try to deny his salvation to somebody else because they're going through some phase in their life or something like that, right? When we look at a ranked order of sins, yes, I think if you go with a classical interpretation of Christianity, sleeping with a partner of the same sex is absolutely a sin. Okay. Do I think that prevents these people from getting into heaven? If you read the Bible, no more than the person who speaks poorly to his wife or too much, or
there's a lot of sins out there.
Or there are so many sins where spin sins every night, watching football games instead of going out there and contributing to the community. That's not how faith works in most versions of the church. And we've just sort of twisted it on its head. And, we should adjudicate morality like this. And it's like, no, I'm sorry.
A gay couple that is married having sex is not more of a sin than an unmarried couple having sex, than premarital sex, biblically speaking. Do you want to ban premarital sex as well? Or is it just You pick on the sins where you think you can get the public on your side. If it's the second, then you're just a bully. And that's not what Jesus asked of you. Let these people know that they're sinning, yes. Teach them the Bible, yes. But you cannot possibly adjudicate all of the Christian moral system. People need to see the light of it and live by it themselves.
The thing that really gets me about these individuals who are like, yeah, we need to make it part of the party platform, that like we, ban gay marriage and stuff like that. It's like they are so pathetic looking from my perspective, because they know this isn't helping with their mainstream issues. They know that doing stuff like this only hurts Republicans' chances of victory. They are just LARPing about a world that they don't exist in.
Yeah.
You don't live in a world where your moral framework is the dominant moral framework. You look as buffoonish as the man who plays with the samurai sword and daydreams about living in a world where their skill with a samurai sword is going to matter. They don't live in feudal Japan. You don't live in 1950s America. Okay? You live in modern America. So why don't we work for the things that can actually get passed and help all of us on the right, instead of doing this whole splitting purity test, when the only way to pass your purity test is to be some extremist that doesn't represent a right-wing voter? Like, this is insane at this point. All right? Even if you disagree with us on this, why are you fighting? You're fighting because you are LARPing. You are the fat, bearded man in a fedora flailing around a katana in his backyard, dreaming about the day he can use this in a fight to the death in feudal Japan. He doesn't live in feudal Japan. You don't live in 1950s America.
As a quick aside here, some people in the comments of another video were trying to argue against gay marriage from quote-unquote a secular perspective, except marriage isn't a secular thing. It's not the piece of paper that they want. It's the ability to undergo the particular marriage ceremony that they want, to be this new status of married instead of not married. That's what comes from a marriage. Because it's a religious thing, and because there are some versions of various religions that allow gay people to marry, we as a secular society should not be preventing it. And if we do, then we have the government come in and begin to adjudicate which interpretations of the Bible are correct and which are wrong, and which religions are we allowed to practice. And I don't think any real Christian wants government bureaucrats coming in and saying these parts of the Bible should be seen this way and these parts of the Bible should be seen this way, because we know exactly what they're going to do when they start doing that.
That's anyway. And I think that this is one of the things that I've been angling for recently, is to get you on the board of the Log Cabin Republicans, because I think that they're now the only group that really supports.
Well, and we got to raise a lot of money for them. I don't know what to tell you.
That's what we've been told. If we can raise more money for them, we can get on the board, which would be fun.
Base camp donors, please donate to the Log Cabin Republicans and say, I came here from Based Camp.
What I love about this episode is that, oh, by the way, people who don't know what the Log Cabin Republicans are, it's the gay Republican lobby.
They're really awesome. They're fantastic.
They're actually like really fun people. Gay Republican parties are like the most fun parties you can go to, because they are all so based. And by based, and this is the thing, a lot of people, they're like, this isn't based because it's not like conservative or straight conservative. If you're just repeating everything that your group wants to hear, you are the antithesis of based.
Yeah.
Being based means saying what you believe is true, regardless of what your group or other groups or society is going to say about it. Like we've had some of our gay friends be like, well, I agree with conservatives on everything, but like they're gay issues, I just can't. And I'm like, that's not the mainstream. Even in Trump's platform at the RNC, the Republican platform this year does not have marriage as being between a man and a woman. It says that we should sanctify marriage and we should try to make more marriages happen, but it does not.
And we should. And we should. Marriage is great. So, okay, here's where things left off with the survey, because I obviously can't take this survey. It just is not going to work out well.
Send it back, yeah.
Yeah. I responded to her, to the CEO of this organization, and I said, oh, thanks. I've added this to my list of surveys to review. TLDR, we're very transparent about our stance on LGBTQ plus issues on our podcast, and I linked to our podcast. So, oh shoot, they're gonna find out if they actually. I don't think they'll watch any of it. And I'm like, the gist is that we support cultural sovereignty. That we believe everyone should be allowed to live the lifestyle that they want, but we're also against imposing your cultural values on other groups, aka we're against cultural imperialism. And that's just where I left it. So these lovely people from Keystone Equality may come to the channel and absolutely hate everything that we're saying here and hate the fact that we've highlighted their candidate survey and suggested that they're leaving room for bad actors that is ultimately going to damage the LGBTQ plus community by giving them a bad name.
They're murdering gay people. They are.
Oh boy. Okay. Yeah. Malcolm's shooting.
No, it's very clear. Like, especially the one where you can't be prosecuted for lying to someone about your HIV status. That hurts.
No, that was in opposition to increased penalties. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
No. They said, hold on, you didn't read it correctly. Then they said that your HIV status should not be able to increase the penalties you are subject for any form of action. What that means is a HIV person telling someone I don't have HIV and sleeping with them should not legally be treated any differently than a non-HIV person telling someone they don't have HIV and sleeping with them. The HIV cannot be taken into consideration when the legal status is judged. It would make it impossible to in any way punish someone for lying about their HIV status. That's the intention of that law, and that will kill gay people.
Simone convinced me of one possible alternative as to what this wording may mean. It may be to prevent higher penalties in grape cases where the attacker had HIV positive status. I don't see this as particularly better because who would a gay man be graping but another gay man? So it just further victimizes the gay community, because I can't think of any other instance where HIV status would be taken into account for more punishment in a crime other than grape or lying to someone about it.
Well, maybe we can share a link to the Google survey, which they might take down. But what I can say, here's our one nice thing we're going to say, okay, is that they used a Google form. And most of these PACs, most of these organizations, they give you a freaking like PDF that you're supposed to fill out. There's like no room to put anything. It's like terribly antiquated. It looks like it was copied 3 times from like a paper printout. At least they're civilized in technology. Okay. So good guys. Love it. Love you too, Malcolm. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Love you.
Bye. Love you.
Okay.